Jordan Leroy Hansen, also known as Ledev, and this has been kind of a tricky week. I've been kind of busy with work slash also just other random stuff that occurred, and apparently a lot of cards have been revealed. Plus, with the new War of the Spark spoilers also starting as well, I'm doing actually something different with that one that I'm going to reveal pretty soon, as soon as Friday or Saturday. I'm going to try a unique twist on it rather than doing a spoiler review. But I do kind of want to finish the spoiler review for this one, so here's the approach I'm going to do. The approach is I'm going to try to go lightning speed round through all the remaining cards. Hopefully this video will be at least a quick one because some of the cards are pretty easy to grade, some of them are not. If we need to go into detail, we can. But that's the long and short of it. Let's actually get started. First card is a neutral epic, 10 mana 6/6 Big Bad Archmage. At the end of your turn, summon a random 6-cost minion. Honestly, this one gets simply the rating of not that great, but while on the contrary, you are going to see a lot more better 6-drops that are coming into the expansion that would not be bad to actually summon randomly from Big Bad Archmage. I don't think it's significant enough to spend 10 mana for a 6/6 and hope you get one of the better 6-drops that are in the Hearthstone kind of like meta collection and such. I don't think that's a relatively good idea. I think it's decent for Arena at the very least. You can try it in Arena without a sweat, but in Constructed, even with Khadgar in the meta, I think it's not that safe to play, honestly. Next up, Paladin Secret, Desperate Measures. A 1-mana spell. It's a twin spell, cast a random Paladin Secret. Okay, this one's pretty simple. This one is going to get the rating of good. Like, it is a really good card. Now, granted, yes, you do have to pay the price of the variance of the card, and sometimes the secret you are going to get that's random is not going to be the one that synergizes with your overall deck strategy. However, the factor that it is random does make it where the opponent is going to have a hard time to answer it. They have to go through all the notions of all the Paladin secrets there are. Plus, there is also the factor that once we get later in the review, you're going to see that Paladin has a lot more secret-based synergies than we anticipated, including some neutral cards that synergize this secret strategy, so I think this card's going to be a lot more relevant than we took at first glance. Nevertheless, good card. Next up, Tak Noswhisker. I think it's how you pronounce the name. 7 mana 6/6. Whenever you shuffle a card into your deck, add a copy to your hand. Okay, this one's pretty easy. This is amazing. Why is this amazing? I can answer that question to you in a very, very, very simple way. If you haven't seen the review video for it, but if you did, you probably know why, but if you didn't, it's because this is a card. Being able to restock your hand with that is nuts. Even if you shuffle other cards into your hand, it's not that bad either. Still, great card, just for academic espionage alone, but I think I'm going to upgrade to Amazing, because this is kind of one of those top-end cards that Burger Rogue does kind of need to at least help be as a good finisher, in my personal opinion. Next up, Archmage Vogoth. This is actually going to be the free legendary we're going to get from the expansion, starting April 5th, if my recollection is correct. Maybe tomorrow, I'm not sure, I think it's the 5th though. It is a 4-mana 2/6. At the end of your turn, cast a spell you cast this turn. Targets are random. Okay, this one we're going to slow down a little bit because I think this one needs to worth discussion since it's going to be a card we're all going to have. So, going back to like the previous with Tak Noswhisker, since we're on the subject, there's going to be specific spells that this perfectly kind of synergizes. Obviously, this is kind of one of those where you don't want to really use it on target-based spells like Walk the Plank or such, or other target-based removal spells or target-based burn spells. Because, well, targets are chosen randomly, so you are going to hit yourself. Very good chance. Some burn deaths might still try it, so for a hopeful finish, but it is a risky play. However, as you can see, in Hearthstone, we have a lot of non-target-based spells that are just perfectly fine to be able to cast pretty much for free thanks to the legendary. Like, for example, casting an additional biology project. You want to be cautious, but it's a good play. Also, just even the other ramp spells, like for example, the one that got nerfed, Wild Growth. On one hand, at its base, it's eh. But the factor that if we use Archmage Wargraph to actually Wild Growth twice, that is pretty significant. And honestly, I could just go through all of them, but for the sake of speed, I say look for your Hearthstone collection. Look at the cards that don't necessarily need to require a target, or specifically targets that are very, very specifically going to target your own stuff. Case in point, say Dire Frenzy for a majority of the time, or even like Mind Control for priests. Keep eye on spells like that, and if you exploit those spells with this Archmage, you're going to have a good time. But pretty much it's going to see meta play. It is a very powerful card if it's used in the right set of circumstances. And there's just some spells where casting it twice can be nuts. Next up, we're going to Druid for Dreamwake Guardian, a 2-mana spell, summon 2, 1/2 Dryads with Lifesteal. Honestly, this is I would say, not that great butt card. I still think it's good in a token-based aggro Druid deck that I think this wants to be in. Because aggro decks, while you think unintuitively don't want the lifesteal, with stuff that we've seen in the meta, at least with mid-range or even aggro decks playing even just early game rush cards or like Hunter or Candle Shot and such, there are some aggro decks that do like to have early control of the board before they go onto their aggressive mid-range game plan. And this card kind of fits perfectly. Plus, it synergizes well with a lot of buffs that Druid has. So if the Dryads don't get answered, then you can just buff them up to become significant threats. Plus, it synergizes with another card that we're going to get to, but just still, if you're not synergizing with that specific card we're going to get to, or if you're not putting this in a token-based deck, then the card's just not that great, but I do think it can see some meta play in the right deck. Next up, White Life Reaver, a 3-mana 2/5. Whenever you restore health, add a random Druid spell to your hand. Honestly, this is not that great but either. However, if you are going into the life restoration Druid deck that it seems like they are trying to encourage a lot in this set, then this card is a pretty good inclusion. Make sure you include enough lifesteal based minions or lifesteal minion generators and enough life based spells as long as you don't play the bad ones. And what do I mean by the bad ones? Well, let me just put it like this. You are not playing this card to play Healing Touch, okay? Let's just get that one out of the way. Just put enough proper lifesteal minions and also just cheap life gain spells, and this card actually is a pretty decent inclusion. Though if you do generate the Healing Touch from the Life Reaver, then okay, then you're alright. Still, I'd say it's not that great, but I do have to admit the value you can get it in the right deck is pretty absurd. Okay, next up. Call to Adventure and Paladin, a 3-mana spell. Draw the lowest cost minion from your deck. Give it +2/+2. This one is also a not that great, but I do see the potential to use this in combo decks to draw specific cards. Plus, also the aspect of it where you can use it to synergize with, well, the card that everybody talks about, which is, say, the Immortal Prelate synergy, which is a synergy to keep in the back of your brain. No denying that. However, I don't know. It's just one of those cards where I feel like I could be wrong, and maybe just because of the Immortal Prelate synergy and also the fact that we're going to get that card that gives our minions lifelink, maybe this is a lot more better as a 1 or 2 of than I think. But, I don't know. The flavor, though, is legitimately cool. Kind of like seeing how kind of one of your lowest minions are going to call to the adventure and just become well experienced and such. Just that flavor alone is really cool. No denying that. Next up, we're going to Rogue with the Underberry Fence. 18-mana 2/3. If you're holding a card from another class, gain ++1 and rush. Okay. How good is this card? Well, to keep it in perspective, we have Pilfer in the meta. So, yeah, I say the card's amazing. It's kind of the card that Burger Rogue need. They needed an aggressive base minion to help essentially control the battlefield while they do burgling shenanigans. It's a really good card for that deck archetype. That deck archetype is popular. It's a really good card. It will probably see play. I'm almost this tempted to say from amazing, but the problem is the 1-mana drop that does help fuel that card can not work at times because, well, you sometimes will go against Rogue. Let's just keep it to the chase on that one. Next up, Druid Legendary, Lucent Bark, 8 mana 4/8 taunt, Death Rattle, go dormant, restore 5 health to awaken this minion. So yeah, quick and short version, it's good. I'm notching it to a little good, even though I was tempted to say not that great, but main reason why is because this card can easily be hated out but with silent base effects or also just mind control, which it's going to feel horrible if it gets mind controlled. But, or even like if someone just reduces stats temporary because we have ways to do that and then changes his mind, Cabal Shadow Breeze, so yeah. However, I do think if you do want to go with a top end for a Restoration Heal Druid, it's not a bad test card. But I would say be very cautious and don't play the card like blindly if you're playing against a priest with a full hand. Still, decent card. I would just say be cautious. It's not a bad card to include in your decks, but make sure you're in the right strategy. Would Legendary would be very good. Next up, the Elizon. Okay, forgive me of my pronunciation of this one, but this is a Warlock card. Oronasi Broodmother, I think it's how you pronounce it. 6 mana 4/6 taunt. Whenever you draw this, restore 4 health to your hero. So, kind of a card that actually takes advantage of the potential plot twist shenanigans. AK, we can try to redraw this thanks to plot twist and gain 4 life. I still say it's not that great, but because it is one of those cards where 6 mana for 4/6 with taunt, even with the potential demon buffing shenanigans that we are getting in the expansion, just makes the card kind of But still, the plot twist shenanigans, you might toy with it in a control-based Warlock deck at the very least. Just for that, pretty much even with the synergies, such as with Augmented Elec and such, and shuffling it back in and such. I mean, there is a deck there. I'm not sure if it's a good deck, but there's a deck idea there. Next up, Dimensional Ripper. 10 mana, 7/2 copies of a minion in your deck. Ugh, I feel bad saying this, but it's a bad card. Don't get me wrong, there is the best case mentality of, hey, maybe I can get like 2 Grow Mashes or a really, really big minion that's really, really powerful. Yay, but the problem is, unless they have charge, or unless they have a significant rush effect, it's essentially 10 mana to summon 2 big fiends that can easily get answered to a board wipe. Yeah. I'm not really optimistic toward this card. It's a cool card, like the design is pretty cool, and it's kind of nice to see them having their, in a way, kind of a recruit, kind of not recruit-based deck synergies, but this card's bad, in my personal opinion. Next up, we're going to Hunter with Shimmerfly, a 1 mana 1/1 Death Rattle, add a random hunting spell to your hand. Okay, quick and short to it, I would say this is a good card. If Spell Hunter is a fiend, they'll probably play it. Also keep in mind it's a 1/1 beast, and hunters do like their cheap 1/1 beasts for beast-based synergies, so you gotta keep that in the back of your brain. Plus, this can just be used with its Death Rattle to just discover another kill command and finish off an opponent. So, yeah, it's a good card. Next up, a legendary neutral minion, Archivist Elysia, which is a 8 mana 7/7 Battlecry, discover 5 cards, replace your deck with 2 copies of each. Okay, remember how I said in the previous video, for those who watch it, how the one con if you try to play a Control Paladin deck with Fatigue, you're probably going to have trouble with Fatigue in Control Paladin, even with the Legendary Dragon? Well, if you want a card to actually help you make that deck a fiend, Archivist Elysia is perfect. It allows you to, once you get to kind of like the Fatigue game, allow to add extra cards into your deck, which helps prevent fatigue. This is actually really cool. I could even see arguments of this being in mid-range to even potentially aggro, but honestly probably not aggro, but more mid-range decks, just to alter the deck when they need to hopefully get the cards they want. Now the cost is there is the variance. You got to keep that in mind. You are discovering from a really, really big pool of cards, so you might not get the perfect compromised deck, so to speak. But it's still a really good card. Plus, also keep in mind, if you play Hekara in your deck, then oh hey, here's a way to get those corrupted bloods out ASAP. Next up, a neutral epic minion, Hinge Clan Hag, a 4 mana 3/3 Battlecry summon 2/1/1 amalgams with all minion types. Okay, to put it simple and short and to the point, the reason why Nightmail Amalgam was a really good card was the fact that it was a free mana free 4, and free mana free 4 are decent stats. Now, you do get decent stats technically with this card because it is, in all its intents and purposes, sorry about that. I think that was sorry, I'm just clicking between these windows and such. For all intents and purposes, it is essentially a 3 mana or a 4 mana 5/5, which is decent stats, but the problem is the tokens can be easily answered to a lot of 5-drop creatures within the meta, so you got to keep that in mind? Who knows? I mean, I don't mind the card, because the factor is those amalgams could synergize with tribal elements if you try to go that route, but be cautious, those amalgams can be easily answered unless you find a way to buff them. So, I'm going to say not that great, but I can see the potential. Next up, Exotic Mountseller, 7 mana 5/8 that has a whenever you cast a spell, summon a random free cost beast. Fine card. I'm going to say it's more a better arena card, but I can see its potential in some constructed. It is definitely going to be one of those cards where you look at all your free mana beasts that are in your collection and see if the overall value you get from it. I mean, I could see it potentially in a spell-centric mage deck, since we do have stuff like Vet's Crow and such, so... I mean, the thought's there. Is Vet's Crow free or 4 mana? I always forget. Yeah, it's 4 mana, so... I mean, if you want to go that route, have a bunch of cheap spells, try to get a bunch of cheap beasts out, that's potential. I mean, if you play Spell Hunter, maybe you get a beast to help you synergize with your beast-based spells. That's something else to consider. I think I'm going to say not that great, but because other than those specific deck archetypes, this is more like a decent arena card than anything else. Still, interesting design at the very least. Next up, a legendary neutral minion, Barista Lynchin. I think it's how you pronounce that second name. Forgive me if I mispronounced that. It's a 5 mana 4/5 Battlecry. Add a copy of each of your other Battlecry minions into your hand. Whew, this one's good. I'm almost tempted to say amazing, but I'm going to stick to good, mostly because I'm thinking of this in Shaman-based decks where they benefit with Battlecry-based stuff. Since we do have some payoffs for Battlecry stuff, aka Shutterwalk, aka if you can play Barista before Shutterwalk gets removed, that's actually pretty good. But there's even stuff in Rogue where you can repeat some Battlecries that are actually significantly powerful. I can even also see this in an aggro-based deck in any type of class archetype, just because the factor is a majority of aggressive decks do rely on Battlecries for aggressive-based strategies, and if you have a board and then use Barista Lynchin to essentially restock your minion of aggressive-based minions, that's nothing to sneeze at. Overall, good card, probably going to see play, and you'll have fun playing with it. Next up, Warrior Legendary, the Boom Reaver. A 10 mana 7/9 mech. Battlecry, summon a copy of a minion in your deck, give it rush. Honestly, not that great, but I mean, don't get me wrong, it is technically a 10 mana minion that does something, technically speaking, and the stats are decent, and the factor that it does have magnetic-based synergies is nothing to sneeze at. However, you do have to design your deck accordingly to make sure that the big minions do get out, and I don't know if that deck can exist. It is tempting to try it in Rush Warrior at the very least, but even then, if you try it in Rush Warrior, you might accidentally just summon a copy of, say, just like a 1-drop or something and give it Rush, which is not bad, but for 10 mana with the 7/9, and that is kind of anticlimactic. Like, yes, there is the best case Magical Christmas Land scenario where you play that and then you get something, say, Akari the Rhino. Then you feel amazing because then you trade into something and then draw another Rush minion. I do admit there is that case of circumstance, but it is kind of one of those where I'm just kind of on it. I am totally on the card. So I'm going to say not that great, but I could see some potential if you want to try it out in Rush Warrior. Or even just discovered randomly with Dr. Boom Mad Genius, and then just be fine with that. Especially if you have a bomb still in your deck. Next up, we're going all the way to Mage again. Conjurer's Calling, a 3-mana spell, twin spell, keep that in mind. Destroy a minion, summon 2 minions of the same cost to replace it. So, this is, technically speaking, can be used as a removal spell in some rare set of circumstances. Like, case in point, you do have to be very cautious of the mana efficiency and such, and just be like, is the drop that the 2 drops that they're going to get will be a lot more answer than the 1 drop they have currently. So you have to keep it like that. Honestly, though, this card is probably going to be mostly used to benefit your minions specifically. You're going to remove your stuff to get better stuff. Like, case in point, I could see a scenario with, say, someone's playing a random hand buff mage. I highly doubt that's going to exist, but who knows. You play Arena Fanatic. Arena Fanatic's not really decent with the stats, so you decide to play the spell on it. You sack it, and you hopefully get, like, maybe a Chillwind Yeti and a Quote Master or something like that. Now, the best application that everybody talks about is probably its silly, really silly synergy with something like Former Champ. For a champ, you get the 5/5 hotshot, then you cast that spell on it, and then, in general, you're going to hopefully get a decent amount of 5-cost, chance of get a decent 5-cost minion. Not always, the 5-cost drop is still big, and there is some bad 5-cost minions, but it's something to consider. Really, this card's just mostly going to benefit with the cards that you're going to play, either because Charge for a quick trade, and Battlecry, kind of like one where the stats are not that great, but the Battlecry is decent. Also, synergizes ridiculously well with Mechanical Whelp, actually, now coming to think of it. And the fact that it has Twin Spell is also nice as well. Honestly, I'll say the card is good, but be careful how you use it. Okay, next up, we're going to all the way to neutral for this one, which is the Potion Vendor. 1 mana, 1/1. Battlecry, restore 2 health to all friendly characters. Well, this one's easy. It's good. It is one of those cards that if you need a health restoration aspect and you have health-based restoration synergies, you're going to take advantage of this card a lot. Especially if you in Priest and you have, like, Northshire Clerics and such. And just the fact that you can have a board, maybe have the one that they showed on stream that I'll point out. The fact that you have Wildfire, Pyromancer, I always get his name wrong. And then the fact that you can cast a cheat spell, it deals a bunch of damage to stuff, then you play Potion Vendor to restore a lot of health to your minions to make sure that they can still be decent for trades, and then you draw a bunch of cards off it. Honestly, really decent synergy. You'll play it if you want to. Oh boy, I am so grateful that the Happy Ghoul is rotating out, because this card's coming into the meta. Thank you. Next up, the Dolarian Librarian. 2 mana, 2 free, Battlecry, silence adjacent minions. Okay, this one is still, I'm going to say, not that great, but even though I do love the flavor of the card, it is one of those where it's really only going to be useful in specific decks. You don't really play 2 mana, 2 fleas. You're only going to play this for the Battlecry, and honestly, the Battlecry is only going to be for very, 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 very specific decks. Which there is the potential for Silent-based Priest, as they showed off as one of their probably constructed decks, so keep that in the back of your brain, but it's just... Also, I guess there is the application that can help unfall Friesen minions, but I don't know. It's not that great, but if you're in Silence Please, you'll probably play it. Next up, the Arcane Watcher. 5 mana, 5/6. Can't attack unless you have spell damage. Okay, this is actually a really interesting card. First of all, the stats are ridiculous for a free drop. Let's keep that in mind. And while the... sorry. And while the clause seems kind of costly at first, you gotta remember that in Hearthstone we have, and also upcoming from the expansion, we have a lot of spell damage based minions. Like, legitimately, we have a lot. So, even some that are damage, even some that can just be played, even though they're not that great plays, ways to even give minions spell damage. I mean, we have a lot, and there's a lot coming in the expansion itself, so you can even go with that route and just be like a spell damage base deck, and then just play this, and then just be like, okay, the moments when I play spell damage minion, use this as a way to attack and trade. That's actually pretty cool. Also, there's the aspect that, as mentioned before, in a silent base deck, this card's perfect. The stats are absurd for an early drop if you can silence it pretty early. Good card, we'll probably see play. Next up, Hinch Clan's Shade Quail. A 4-mana 4/7, Death Rattle, restore 5 health to the enemy hero. Honestly, it's not that great, but the stats are decent. You can use it for trades, and if you are, yet again, in the silent-based deck, it's actually pretty cool. However, one thing to keep in mind, the Death Rattle could also be used aggressively if you play kind of like cards that does make it where your healing deals damage, so keep that in the back of your brain. However, though, I do think the card's not that great, but still, decent arena card at the very least. Next up, a 5-mana rare priest minion, the Convincing Infiltrator. A 5-mana 2/6 with Taunt and the Death Rattle, destroy a random enemy minion. So essentially, we are getting a smaller Obsidian Dragon. I think it's the name of the card. Hang on, I always get the names of this priest card wrong, even though I play against it a lot. We'll go to crafting. It's essentially... It is 9. Oh, it's because I have the spell still in there. So essentially what you're doing is you're paying for statue. It's not dragon, it's statue, even though it kind of looks like it. No, actually it does more look like a statue. So essentially you're getting a 5-mana obsidian Sorry, I constantly do that. So, clicking through the windows here and try to do this fast, I apologize in advance. Anyway, this is actually a pretty good card for 5 mana. You can actually use it to be defensive, and then it can be used to destroy a random minion, which is really nice. Plus, it does synergize with that 2-drop that copies a friendly Death Rattle minion. That's actually really good. I think I'm going to say amazing. I think this is a card that will see play in Priest, no sweat about it. Just that ability in itself to be used as both as a defensive card and removal is nothing to sneeze at. Next up, we're going to go to Rogue with the Waggle Pick, which is a 4-mana 4/2 weapon, Death Rattle, return a random friendly minion to your hand. It costs 2 less. So, essentially, this is a weapon that has decent stats that can, once it dies, can essentially become a Shadow Step. Honestly, if you play this right, it's not a bad card. I'm going to say good, but it is a card where you do have to play it accordingly. Also, keep in mind, Weapon Hate's a Feign, so keep that in the back of your brain. Next up, we go to a Priest common spell, which is the Unsleeping Soul, a 4-mana priest spell. Silence a friendly minion, then summon a copy of it. Okay, you want to know a reason why Silence Priest might be a thing? This is the reason. They showed it on stream. It seems to be a pretty silly, at least constructed deck at the very least. We're probably going to have this as one of our intro decks, most likely. And we do have a card to help us get a random of the intro starting decks again, like Fizzbane and such. So, yeah, we're probably going to see this as the constructed deck. But I can also see a competitive viability trying this card out. And there's a lot of synergies also, just the fact that helps stop your minions from being frozen and such. Unfreeze them and get an extra copy. There's a lot of tempo you can get from this card. I say it's good. It's not perfect, but it's good. Next up, Soldier of Fortune. A 4-mana 5/6, whenever this minion attacks, give your opponents a coin. This one's a pretty simple one. Are you playing the Silence deck? Are you playing anything that will benefit from an elemental-based synergy? If not, don't play this card. It's bad. Giving your opponent, even with those stats, giving your opponents a coin advantage is not really great, especially when there's a lot of cheap spell-based synergies that players in Hearthstone like to play with. So, yeah, it's a bad card. Next up, Proud Defender, 4-mana 2/6, Taunt, have +2 attack while you have no other minions. Honestly, this is a decent card. I'll say that. It's decent for a common. It is the factor that if you are more spell-oriented or if you're more on late-game payoff decks, you might play this card without a sweat because that defensive aspect of it is pretty nice. However, there is the catch-22 that once you have a minion to your deck, and sometimes the majority of Hearthstone's deck will require minion-based strategies, so then the card becomes significantly worse. Know how to brew around the card, and know if this is a card you want for your deck. If not, you're probably going to include it as a safe experimentation, and that's the epiphany of a good card. Next up, we go to Warlock with Inferno, a free mana spell. Give your demons +1, attack, deal 1 damage to all enemy minions. Okay, this one's pretty simple. It's amazing. The factor that if we want to encourage a demon-based Zoolock deck, this is a really good spell to synergize. This is also good as just semi-tempo removal, removes tokens and such. It's really, really good. It's kind of like a mini Savage Roar slash kind of like a mini I always get the name of this mage spell wrong, so let me check it real quick. Arcane Explosion, I believe. Yes, it's a mini Arcane Explosion and also a buff spell at the same time. That is the epiphany of, I would say, a good card, but the fact that we're getting a lot of demon-based synergies in Warlock already, including some we're going to see, I'm going to give this card a little notch to amazing. I do think it will see meta play. Plus, also the tiny little synergies with, say, spell damage. Keep that in the back of your brain. Next up, Mana Reservoir. A 2-mana 0/6 elemental, spell damage +1. It's not that great, but honestly, it is one of those cards where I think if you do want to do a spell damage based deck, it's not a bad inclusion. Honestly, though, I think this was just built so that it keeps cards like, say, the Menacing Nimbus relatively balanced, honestly. It's a card that keeps Menacing Nimbus balanced, also synergizes with Earth and Might, so I gotta keep that in the back of my brain. You can actually Earth and Might that. Actually, that's something to consider. Nevertheless, though, I'd still say not that great, but if you are a spell damage-based deck, you might consider it, but be cautious. Next up, the Magic Dart Frog. A 2-mana 1-free beast. After you cast a spell, deal 1 damage to a random enemy minion. Whew, this is good. This is a card that if you have a lot of cheap spells in Mage, which typically mages do, this is actually really good to help get a significant tempo advantage. It's kind of like a Knife Juggler, but the Knife Juggler is rely on spell-based energies. And as we mentioned before, Mage already have enough cheap spells that they are willing to play, plus also enough kind of like spells upcoming from the meta that they will play as well. I think the card will see play, it's safe to experiment with, it's a good card. Next up, Magic Carpet. Free mana 1/6. After you play a 1-cost minion, give it +1 attack and rush. Honestly, this one I'll say not that great, but it is a fun exercise to look at all your 1-cost minions in your Hearthstone collection and just be like, okay, would I put this in my deck if I have a 1/6 minion to give it +1 in rush? Still, interesting to try in Zoolock decks at the very least, so keep that in the back of your brain, so yeah. Next up, Mad Summoner. A 6-mana 4/4 demon. Fill each player's board with +1/+1 imps. Surprisingly, I'm kind of surprised I'm going to say this, but it's good. No, I'm not kidding. Yeah, the factor that it feels unintuitive at first because you feel like, wait, isn't giving my opponent's minions a bad thing? And yes, it is. However, there are synergies to essentially help counteract that. Like maybe you can say, play this, play the imp, and then say, for example, destroy one of them with, say, I don't know, what's a 1-cost spell that can make our minions buff to help answer against their minions? Huh. Plus, there's also little synergies like with Mortal Coil, or heck, you could even play Knife Juggler, then play this, and then the minions you summon hopefully answer the minions that are going to be played on the opponent's side of the field. I think this is surprisingly a good card in a Zoolock deck. I'm surprised that I'm saying that myself. I think this card is a safe card that we'll see play. I am still kind of dumbfounded I'm saying that. Next up, Jumbo Imp, a 10-mana 8/8, aka Giant Imp. Costs 1 less whenever a friendly demon dies while this is in your hand. I say this card's amazing. I know there's some people that are kind of tilting their head sideways at the card because it's like it's a card that only synergizes when it's in your hand, but gotta keep in mind we have a lot of hand buff based synergies in Warlock already, aka this, and also there's other cards like Spirit of the Bat, so even if you have to hold it in your hand and wait to trade for a few demons, chances are it's going to get buffed through various means, making it a more significant threat that's going to get discounted. Don't underestimate this card. This card is going to probably bring Big Game Hunter back into the meta. I kid you not. Next up, Kirin Tor Tricaster, a 4 mana mage spell that's a free rare. Spell damage plus free. Ooh. Your spells cost one more. Ooh. I'm gonna say good, but I'm so tempted to say not that great. But because good, because the spell damage plus free is nothing to sneeze at. This could, in theory, be used to help close off a game as a finisher to just say, play it, and then Frostbolt to deal like 12 damage to the opponent. I gotta keep that in the back of my brain. But on the other hand, that is kind of like the only finisher I can think of, because any more copies you have on this, it makes the spell significantly a lot more expensive, so... Yeah... I mean, I don't know. Maybe you'll see more play than I think, but it is kind of one of those, I think you'll at least see safe experimentation, which yet again, epitome of a good card. Next up, the Sunreaver War Mage. A 5 mana 4/4 battlecry. If you're holding a spell that costs 5 or more, deal 4 damage. I say this card's surprisingly good. If you're playing a control-based deck that does rely on spells that cost 5 or more, aka playing Mage, you probably are going to play this card because the tempo advantage you get from just being able to deal 4 damage, or heck, it's deal 4 damage to anything. You don't even have to deal to minions. You can actually just use this as an aggressive spell as well. Yeah, I'm going to actually say amazing. This card is going to most likely see play in the right decks that do have the high cost spells to accommodate for the battlecry. Next up, a Druid spell, Acorn Bearer, Death Rattle, add 2 1/1 squirrels to your hand. It's a 2/1. It's good. If you're playing an aggressive or token-based Druid deck, you're going to probably have this as an auto-include, no sweat about it. The fact that it generates tokens for your hand is nice, and the fact that you can play those tokens out pretty cheap, and then also buff them through various means. Plus, they're beasts, so they have beast-based synergies. You got to keep in mind on that. Overall, I say the card's good. And now we're going to get back to think about Secret Paladin in a minute and how I say that it's going to see some play. Well, these next few cards will probably explain why. 2 mana, Sunreaver Spy, Battlecry. If you control a secret, gain +1/+1. So a 2 mana that if you control a secret, which is probably Paladin will easily play on turn 1, you're going to make a 2 mana free for it. That is ridiculously early game stats. It's a good card. Enough said. Next up, Mysterious Braid, Battlecry. If you control a secret, gain +1 attack. So essentially, yet again, if you can play a turn 1 secret, which chances are you're going to probably do, this is going to become a fiery war axe, which can either be used aggressively or it can be used defensively. Honestly, I think this card's amazing. Paladins have easier ways to cast their secrets. They have a lot of secrets they can play. Secret Paladin is coming. Be prepared. This card's going to help it pretty nicely. Next up, a Druid spell again. Blessing of the Ancients. A free mana twin spell. Give your minions +1/+1. I'm going to probably kick myself in the foot by saying this, but I think this is a bad card. It's one of those cards where, yes, the twin spell aspect of it is something to keep in the back of your brain, don't get me wrong, but giving your minions +1/+1 for free mana with the twin spell is just... It's essentially saying, okay, we're spending 6 mana to give our minions +2/+2. Alright, but not great. It's just, I think this is a bad card. Moving on. Okay, for context with the next card, I think I need to show something off to see how excited I am with this card. Okay, the 4 mana Scargill. It's a 4 mana 4/4 Murloc. Your Murlocs cost 1, it's legendary. Okay, I like to play Murlocs a lot. It's kind of like one of my gimmick decks I like to play, even though there are meta-competitive decks you can play as well. And this legendary, plus a few cards that we're going to see, does seem like you can make a Murloc Shaman deck, and that kind of makes me happy inside. I'm going to say... Now, realistically, the instinct of me wants to say not that great, but because you can only play this in a Murloc deck, obviously. But I do think the synergy you get from your Murlocs having that significant discount is nothing to sneeze at, especially how Murlocs are a aggressive to mid-range deck. I mean, the fact that you can play this, if it doesn't get answered, you can play out and barf out a ton of Murlocs and then hopefully get in for some significant damage. That's very nifty. I am so excited. This card gets my good. I am not going to say amazing, even though my bias wants to say that, but it's a good card. Next up, Underbelly Angler. A 2-mana 2-free. After you play a Murloc, add a random Murloc to your hand. Okay, I'm going to let my bias talk onto this one. This one is amazing. Okay, so if you're playing a Murloc deck, which obviously this wants you to play, this is a card that helps restock your hand, which Murloc decks do need, quite frankly. And the fact that it refills with a Murloc, it's a card that both will replace itself every time you play a Murloc. Oh, I am so excited to play this card. This card's amazing. It's good. It's really, really good. Okay, next up, a card that's not so good. Soul of the Murlocs. A 2-mana spell, give your minions Death Rattles, summon a 1/1 Murloc. I'm going to say not that great, but I do see the potential synergies in the Murloc deck, don't get me wrong, and the fact that you replace yourself with Murlocs is nice. However, you would rather have the Murlocs be like stuff like Underbelly Angler, or like Murlocs to help finish the game. Though I could see people still testing this as a one-of at the potential, just to help them have a protection button just in case if somebody tries to board clear their Murloc board. I could see that, and then they could just go with the, well, let's go with all the Murloc that everybody knows about, which is, well, let's see. They can pretty much get a Murloc War Leader out, and then hopefully go for a finisher. That's a potential. I'm going to still say not that great, but because I could see it easily cut out without a sweat. Next up, Mutate. A 0-mana spell. Transform a friendly minion into a random one that costs 1 more. It's a shaman spell. I'm going to say bad. It is a card where this is one of those ones where evolving one minion, just a random friendly minion to cost 1 more, is not bad, don't get me wrong. But I don't know if I would be willing to spend a card slot to just only do it to 1 minion. The reason why I say the one shaman card that always constantly see play, like Evolve and also stuff, is because it targeted a lot of minions, or the more popular one that sees play right now, which is Unstable Evolution. It's a factor that you can essentially, it's repeatable this turn. You can repeat it and repeat it again and again and again and again, and hopefully make your board state or get a minion into a significant tempo advantage. This, on the other hand, only will do it to 1 minion, and you're hoping by the random chance that it's a good minion. I mean, I guess you could use it as a semi-post-combat trick, maybe, so that you can restock your minion board, at least with one of the minions. Maybe. I don't know. I'm still going to say bad, though. Next up, Rapid Fire. 1 mana, twin spell, deal 1 damage. Okay, this card's good. Don't underestimate it. Yes, it is the factor that technically spending 2 mana for a 1 mana deal 2 damage feels awkward, but remember, we have a lot of spell damage based synergy in the meta. There's going to be a lot of spell damage potentially, and the fact that this can significantly get upgraded to deal a lot more damage is something to keep in the back of your brain. I'm not going to say we'll play stuff like Kill Command or such, but hey, it is one of those cards that I will not mind casting randomly from Zujon and actually dealing myself 1 damage to my face, but if I deal 1 damage that's hopefully lethal to my opponent, oh, nifty, nice. And also can just be used as a semi-post-combat trick to essentially help finish off a minion if they're not totally finished. So, epiphany of a good card. Next up, Safeguard. A 6 mana 4/5 with Taunt. That's a mech. Death Rattle. Summon a 0/5 Vault Safe with Taunt. Honestly, I was saying before for the Mech Hunter to be a thing, we need more mechs with Death Rattles. This is actually a pretty decent option. I'm not going to say it's one that will overall break Mech Hunter per se, but it's a decent card. Also, the fact that the mechs can be magnetized is something to be considerate. It's a very defensive-based unit, which could help against aggressive-based metas. It's actually a pretty good card in that sense. So I'm going to say good. It's a good card. Next up, Totsfin. Okay, I love the pun. It's a 1 mana 1/2. Give a friendly Murloc Poisonous. Yes, this card's good. The fact that we Murloc decks, our main enemy, are taunt-based minions. The fact that we can give, hopefully, one of our lesser Murlocs Poisonous to help trade into a taunt minion to hopefully get all of our other Murlocs to go to the face. That's pretty significant. I can see some people just only putting this in as a one-of, or maybe not in at all, and hopefully hoping that, say, the Underbelly Angler helps them get a Totsfin. I could definitely see that. Still, I think it's a good card. Next up, back to Hunter. We get a mech, actually, that has Death Rattle. Yay! It's Ursitron, a free mana free mech. Death Rattle, draw a mech from your deck. Wow, that kind of sounds like a rhyme, unintentional rhyme. Anyway, nevertheless, I would say it's a good card. Does synergize well if you're in the mech-based Hunter deck, and also just the fact that it draws a specific mech from your deck could also help with combo decks, so keep that in mind. Also, it's just a free mana free. Not perfect in stats, but not bad in stats, especially when you consider that you can magnetize it, so I say good card. Next up, Arcane Fletcher, a 4 mana free. Whenever you play a 1-cost minion, draw a spell from your deck. I'm going to say not that great, but I could say that if Spell Hunter is a fiend, I don't know how many 1-cost minions they're going to play. Like, the only one I could think of is that 1-cost bug that we were talking about earlier. I don't know. I mean, I guess technically a lot of hunters are still going to probably play with Spring Paw. And I guess if you're going to use Spring Paw with that card on the field to draw an additional spell from your deck, which, yeah, I guess I need to consider it that way. So I'm going to say not that great, but if you do tailor your deck accordingly to accommodate for the card draw, I think you'll be fine trying the card out. It's not perfect, but I think it's fine. Next up, the Arcane Servant, a 2 mana 2 free neutral minion that's an elemental, and that is it. Honestly, as I said before with the other elemental, it's mostly there just to keep this specific elemental in check, aka Earthen Might, and also menacing numbers. That's really its main purpose. I mean, good card in Arena, especially if you have elemental based synergies. Gotta keep that in mind. But besides that, I'm gonna say it's a bad card. Next up, Azurite Elemental, 5 mana 2/7. At the start of your turn, gain spell damage +2. Bad. Reason why? It is a 5 mana 2/7, which that stats are just and the synergy you're trying to get from it, the gain spell damage +2, can easily be silence. Who knows? This could be the one card that I could be wrong about, but I'm just going to go with my gut instinct and say it's bad. Next up, Burly Shovel Fist, a 9 mana 9/9 with Rush. Honestly, not that great, but I could see it being good in some circumstances, especially if you're playing a Rush-based deck. It's definitely going to be a fine arena card, though, in my personal opinion. Just the fact that it's a 9 mana 9/9, answers to a minion, Fret, and you still get a significant threat on the board. Nothing to sneeze at. But still, I think it's a not that great butt card. Next up, Delirium Crusader, 5 mana 5/4, Divine Shield. I'm going to say not that great, but I mean, granted, 5 mana 5/4 with Divine Shield is not bad, but mostly with Divine Shield minions, with the exception of cards like Tyrion and such, you don't really like high cost minions with Divine Shield. You mostly like doing it with earlier game minions because they help with efficient trading and they don't hopefully get answered to target base removal that classes play and such. So, yeah. Who knows? I think it's a decent arena card at the very least, but still gets my rating of not that great. But next up, Rogue card, Daring Escape. Return all friendly minions to your hand. This one's pretty simple. Are you playing a deck that has either combo-based synergies, or lackey-based synergies, or really significant synergies with Battlecry that has Spirit of the Shark? You're probably going to play this card. With that, it's good. Moving on. Next up, Darkest Hour. 6 mana spell, destroy all friendly minions. For each one, summon a random minion from your deck. This card's bad. I mean, don't get me wrong, there is the best case mentality of this card where it's like, oh, I destroy my weak minions, and then I get stronger minions, maybe I get my late game minions. Woo! No. On the contrary, you might also just get a bunch of your lower cost aggro based minions that you don't really want to summon from Darkest Hour. However, there is one thing to keep in mind. The fact that you do destroy a lot of minions could synergize with some potential Death Rattle shenanigans, so you gotta keep that in the back of your brain, or maybe even an Egg Hunter style of deck. Well, not Egg Hunter, Egg Warlock in this case, but you get my shtick. I say be cautious with this card, but it's not. I still say it's not that great, but even though I am tempted to say, you know what, I'm gonna go with my gut instinct. It's a bad card. I don't think it's a card that will see play. I could be wrong, though. Next up, the Eccentric Scribe. A 6 mana 6/4, summon 4/1/1 summon 4/1/1 Vengeful Scrolls. So I say it's a not that great butt. It is a card that does have some decent synergies. The fact that it does replace itself with a bunch of little books that can be used for efficient trading, or it could be used as a way to summon an early game Sea Giant. I gotta keep that in mind. That's actually pretty cool. But still, the stats are okay. They're not great, but they're okay. I'd say not that great, but though. Who knows? I could be wrong. Next up, Faceless Lager, a free mana 5/1, copy of friendly minion's health. So essentially, this is a magma rager that can either vary from being pretty bad to pretty good, depending on the health of a friendly minion. You know what? I'm gonna go with my gut instinct and say this is bad. I mean, cards that rely on other base minions are usually not that consistent, and this one, I don't know. Unless you have like a big butts type of deck, I don't think you would want to play this card personally. Next up, Flightmaster, a free mana free 4, Battlecry, summon 2/2 Griffin for each player. So they get a 2/2 beast. You get a 2/2 beast, they get a 2/2 beast. Decent stats for a free drop. Honestly, I can only see this as potentially either you're playing a Hunter and you're trying to get beast-based energy from the Hawk, or I could see this as a semi-tech card to hopefully, like, if the opponent's like at 9 cards, you play this card, you fill up their hand, you hopefully burn an essential card. I think it's more going to see arena play than anything else, but still, it's a decent card, so I'm going to say not that great, but. Next up, Hinch Clan Sneak, a free mana free with stealth. And I'm going to say not that great, but. Great arena card, personally, but honestly, I don't really see the beneficial of a free mana free stealth that doesn't have like magnetic. It's not a mech. It's not any type. You can't get buffed. So yeah, I think it's. My gut wants to say bad, but I do know that the factor that stealth minions are something you gotta still keep your eye on. So I'm gonna say not that great, but. Next up, Heroic Innkeeper, an 8 mana 4/4 with Taunt and Battlecry, gain +2/+2 for each other friendly minion. Potentially great in zoo decks, but you do have to have a board presence for this to be significant, so keep that in mind. Still, I'm going to say not that great, but because this is a card that its value is going to be very dependent on your board state, keep that in mind. Next up, Hunter card, Hunting Party. It is a 5 mana rare spell, copy all beasts in your hand. This is interesting. On one hand, if we have a way to quote unquote have some aggressive draw base units and such, and we do have stuff like Master's Call, we could do like a turn 8 Master's Call and then Hunting Party to make our hand significant. But then you're doing a turn 8 doing nothing, but on the other hand, you could. This is kind of one of those cards where you're costing tempo for hopefully more late game value or more beasts to play. I think it's going to be totally dependent on the variance of your hand and such. So I'm going to say not that great, but I see the potential, but I do think the hand variance does make the card really hard to play. Still, crazy to get with Zujin, though. Next up, Portal Keeper, a 4 mana 5/2. Battlecry, shuffle 3 portals into your deck. When drawn, summon a 2/2 demon with Rush. So this is kind of like a neutral Nerubian Strider, essentially, where instead of shuffling spiders into your deck, you're shuffling demons with Rush, which I think is actually a lot more beneficial, especially as a neutral package. I'm going to say the card's good. I think the factor that you can hopefully, in some circumstances, when drawn, get what essentially is a 2/2 with Rush to help with trades, that's nothing to sneeze at. And hey, if you're in a demon-based Zoolock deck, then more power to you. So I say the card's good. Portal Ovalfiend, which is a 6 mana 5/6, that does the same. Battlecry, essentially. So, yeah, pretty much same thing applies as I said before. Good card, though this one does have better stats. So if you need a better stat minion that has the same Battlecry, here you go. Next up, Recurring Villain. 5 mana free 6. If this minion has 4 or more attack, resummon it. Bad. I know people are going to be like, but hey, hand buff and all that stuff. But you gotta remember that the thing your hand buff, when this dies, it's not going to be its buff stats, it's going to become a free 6 again. So I guess it does have some realm of, hey, being a recurring villain and such. But there are going to be circumstances where this minion is going to die. Still, I guess the question is, do you have as much value as you get? It is sticky. I still say it's bad. I don't think this is a card where you want to brew your deck around it, but who knows? I could be wrong. Next up, Spellbook Binder, 2 mana free 2. If you have spell damage, draw a card. I'm going to say not that great, but still, there's a lot of spell damage based synergies in the meta, so that are coming in the meta thanks to the set. So gotta keep that in mind. And a 2 mana free 2, that's decent stats, and the fact that you can draw a card potentially out of it, that's nothing to underestimate. But I'm still gonna say not that great, but. Next up, Sleeping Strikes, a 2 mana warrior spell, give a minion, also damages minions next to whomever this attacks. So essentially, if you have a free 2, you attach this enchantment to them, and there's like free minions on the opponent's field, they're going to deal free damage to all free minions, as long as they attack the middle one, obviously. I'm going to say good, but it is one of those you do have to be careful of how you play this card. Make sure you put it on the right rush minion, and make sure you do it at the right time, and you're fine. Next up, 7 mana, Tunnel Blaster, a rare, free 7 with Taunt. Death Rattle, deal free damage to all minions. Are you playing on the late game and you need more defensive-oriented units to help against mid-range or aggro? You're probably going to play this card. More better in Arena, but I could see some potential constructed applications, so I'll say good. Next up, Underbelly Ooze, 7 mana free 5. After this minion survives damage, summon a copy of it. I'm going to say not that great, but I could see this potential in Pain, Warrior-based synergy decks, and all that stuff, and it is a card that is, in a sense, sticky to an extent, but I don't know all the possible applications you would want to use this card for, personally. Next up, Vicious Scrap Hound, 2 mana 2/2 minion mech. Whenever this minion deals damage, gain that much armor. It's a good mech, but honestly, mostly it's there just to make sure that we don't get constantly the Devastator constantly when we discover mechs with Dr. Boom, honestly. Still, there is Magnetize in the meta, so you gotta keep that in mind. And also, just being a 2/2 mech that if you trade into something you get 2 armor, it's fine. It's pretty much just a fine card. And if you can buff it from many ways and get more armor on it, more power to you. So I say it's a good card. Next up, Violet Spell Sword, 4 mana 1/6. Gain +1 attack for each spell in your hand. Bad. Honestly, I don't know if a heavy spell-based deck besides Spell Hunter would exist, and I'm not sure if they want to play this card. Maybe we'll see some play in Arena, but I highly doubt it. 6 mana, 4/7, Violet Warden, Taunt, spell damage +1. I'd say not that great, but I mean, it's a decent taunt minion. If you need a spell damage synergy, it's fine. But I do think this is also in the kind of like cost where it's prone to silence, so yeah. Next up, Whirlwind Tempest. Your minions with Wind Fury have Mega Wind Fury, which means instead of attacking just 2 times, they can attack 4 times. So, to answer this question pretty simply, how many minions do we have that have Wind Fury? We have 1, 2, 3, 4 potentially, 5, 6. And 1 coming thanks to, I always do that. And hopefully that's the last one of doing it. And hopefully 1 more thanks to the expansion. I mean, you can give it a shot. I would say it's not a good idea to try it out, but still, it's a tempting payoff at the very least. I'm going to say not that great, but because I do think the way you have to brew around this card is not as easy as once thought. Though, if you can find a way to get some Wind Fury elementals in Mage and discounted, maybe? No, that's not really that possible since I don't think mages have any Wind Fury minions. Nah, I'm going to say not that great, but it's a cool card though. Especially getting Wind Fury back, it's kind of pretty neat. And next up, the final callback card that we are going to get from Hagatha and Shaman, the Witch's Brew. 2 mana, restore 4 health, repeatable this turn. This one's good. I know it seems unexciting at first, but the fact that this has Echo, which is really what the callback mechanic is. This one is Echo, but it's saying repeatable this turn because, well, mostly probably Blizzard not wanting to confuse people have seen only one card have Echo in the meta, which is understandable. But in control-based Shaman decks, this is actually a pretty fine card. I mean, late game, you can use this to restore up to 20 health, which is very powerful. Plus, it's also a random spell you can discover with the random mage spell generators that the class does have. You got to keep that in mind. I say it's a good card. And I believe that is the final card, and that's all the cards from the set. Whew. Anyway, I'm probably going to work on also some Furycraft videos of some potential decks you can try out upcoming, and maybe also a blog / pack opening video and such. I'll see what I can produce. I hope you enjoyed my two really lightning round quick 2 cents on these cards. I hope you all have a lovely day. This is LevDev, signing out.